ULTI.TV.
Good afternoon and welcome to the men's final of the Brisbane-Canberra Invitational, coming to you live from the nation's capital. My name is Max Stenstrom. Alongside me is Anita Beck. And we have the pleasure of bringing you Colony Uprising and Newcastle I-Beam going head-to-head at the pointy end of the men's division, battling out for glory. Anita, I know you've had a chat to some of the players on both teams. You know a bit of how they got here. What's the story so far?
So both teams have had a pretty good weekend. Colony's coming into this final undefeated, so you can't ask for more than that. And I-Beam have only lost one, and that was to Ellipsis, and then they beat Ellipsis in the semi to be here. So they've had a pretty good warm-up, run-up to the tournament, to the game. Colony has a full squad at this tournament, and they continue to have that full squad for the final. They haven't sustained any injuries over the tournament, whereas unfortunately I-Beam have actually lost 4 players. So it'll be interesting to see how they cope with that. They have 13 for the game versus Colony's 20. So some people like to play with a shorter roster. They can feel more a part of the game and feel that emotion as it goes up and down and really be a part of it and can respond to that, whereas others prefer that bigger squad so they can just keep fresh legs.
It's certainly been I-Beam's habit over the last few years at least to have relatively small squads. I remember my first nationals in 2010 where I-Beam came away the victors. They had 14 for the whole of nationals and managed to get the job done with just that few. See whether they can replicate those results here. They've clearly done well enough to get themselves into the final. It's worth noting that while they're primarily Newcastle, they've got a pretty decently sized Wollongong contingent on their roster this weekend and for this season as well. It'll be Hill to get things started with the pulling duties. And Colony will be playing some offense going upwind. The wind's coming right to left and towards the camera. And you can see that wind come into play on the very first pass from Alex Shepherd. And John O'Keefe looks to move things quickly. The young handler out of Wollongong connects with Chris Folkes. And now they find Scammell. Hill finds Folkes. And back to Hill. Hill known for his massive work rate. And Newcastle make quick work on the defensive end of things to start with a break, to go up 1-0 and really set the tone early. They may be the underdogs, but they're clearly here to play.
Yeah, Colony there playing match to begin with. Now these teams don't actually know each other as well as some of the teams who've been playing this tournament. They've met at regionals, but that's the only time they've met this season, and that was a sudden death finished with Colony just beating I-Beam there by 1 point. So they might spend a little bit of time feeling each other out, seeing what the strengths are and what they're going to bring to the tournament, particularly if this is the first time that Colony's had their full squad. I-Beam might not actually be aware of what they can bring entirely.
It has been a little while since they faced up at regionals, over a month. And a lot can change in that time, especially, as you say, bringing in the full roster. But just in terms of fine-tuning, tweaking their offensive and defensive structures, their way they play can look very different. Denya, forehand, pops over the top. Shepherd can't hold on to it. And a second cheap turn from Colony, very uncharacteristic. And the Newcastle D-line will try to take advantage early. Establish a foothold in this match. Folkes again. Finds Boothie in the centre. And they're working it up the high side in the wind. Scammell does a good job of keeping it in, does he? A little bit of discussion about the toes. Scammell seems pretty confident that his foot was in. Michael Thomas a little less confident. And they'll get the perspective of the people on the line. Not on the field, the substitutes. See if we manage to get a good look. It's probably pretty difficult to see the line from this angle. It certainly is. Looks like the disc will go back. Contested. Disc will remain in the hands of Hayes. The stall count was low. Oh, we've got an injury early. I-beam's 13, maybe down to 12. Clutching an ankle, not a good sign. Rolled it, and Ryan Davey will come on to take his spot. And Locke Murph will take the spot of Michael Thomas for Colony, taking their opportunity to get fresh legs onto the field. I-beam coughed that one up easy. Scammell just throws a forehand straight into the grass, despite being in a really great position for I-beam's defense. Evans finds more. Shepherd's going deep, but the throw doesn't come. Now Evans with the disc again. He'll be the shot taker as he is here, looking for Bray. Falls short. Bray does well to come back under and attack the disc before folks can get the block. And Shepherd inside flick finds Visor. And Colony Uprising get themselves on the board.
So I was having a chat with the Colony team just before they started, and they were commenting on how clinical the I-beam's offense can be and how you have to be really proactive to get a defense block from them. But that's not what we saw in this last point. It seemed very easy throwaway from I-beam there.
Was their defensive offense? Perhaps we'll see something different when they've got their true offense line out there. Some high-class, high-quality veterans on the field that may add to that composure, less likely to give up the disc cheaply. In their semi-final, they managed to win on Universe Point against Ellipsis, and I saw that final point at 12 apiece. I-beam was on offense, and they did exactly as you say, just play clinical all the way up the field. Really calm, despite some massive Ellipsis defensive pressure. I'm sure if they play at that standard throughout this game, it'll be tight the whole way. Lavis to Davey in the centre. And they'll go back. Colony in some kind of a junkie look, at least early. And they now collapse back into match. And a miscommunication as to who that pass was intended for leads to a throw into traffic. Now Colony defense get a chance upwind. M. Hodgson, the big throwing, long-limbed leader of this defensive line, picks up the disc. Colony having to go backwards to maintain possession. McDonald fires a forehand into the wind. Todd Hill is his intended target, who goes up early with the left hand. And Colony respond with their break of their own. (2-1) to Colony.
Nice to see an upwind break there by Colony, giving them a potential advantage coming down on defense, downwind.
And this offensive I-beam not quite living up to their standard or their reputation, at least so far. And now they have the added challenge of playing into the wind. Uprising coming off a slightly easier semi-final than I-beam. They won out against Mammoth 15-10, giving themselves a little bit more time in between matches to rest and refocus. I-beam not really having that luxury, having to go back-to-back here. Colony collapsing into match. Stoddard to Lavis. Back through the guts to Stoddard and Hayes. This is more I-beam style offense that we'd expect. Keeping that tempo high. Oh, and that's an aggressive throw. Ryan Davey takes it. Unconventional option into an unconventional space, but it's effective.
They're the kind of throws that you can make when you know your teammates really well. You know where they're going to be moving to, and you can throw into that space knowing that they're going to come in.
And I-beam keep it level at 2 apiece. Up to that point of that final throw, the I-beam offense really looked like they'd clicked. And to be honest, Colin not able to put a whole lot of pressure on a lot of those unders. Final pass a little bit more risky, but they do come down with it.
And we've seen that a couple of times today, that if you can keep your offense quick and the defense can't ever set themselves up, then making sure that you can make those passes, it makes offense really easy.
As I-beam prepare themselves to play a bit of defense. See Tim Booth take a knee, provide some guidance. He's one of their injuries and he's a significant loss on the field. A veteran of Wollongong Ultimate and of many a representative campaign. Still able to share his wisdom and guidance with the team if he's not able to actually take the field and contribute in that way. Evans. Bray goes deep. Finds more. Doesn't have a lot open up for him. Has to swing for Evans. And there's a pick call on the stack. Evans, one of the captains of this team, one of the leaders of the club. Known for being a big throwing risk taker. Big bid from Keys. Can't stop Colony going to the open side. As they find Bray. He's been out of the country for a couple of years, but he returns after playing and spending some time in Singapore. And immediately having an impact for Colony.
Do you feel that that overseas experience contributes to Australian Ultimate?
I think I should be asking you that question considering your history, Anita, but absolutely I think it does. People talk so often about the distinctive characteristics of the styles of Ultimate played in each country. You know, it's a truism to say the Japanese love inside breaks, the Americans love to isolate players in space, Canadians, maybe more the Canadians of old, love to bomb it to matchups similar to maybe an Australian style of old, big throwers and big receivers playing the jump ball game. I think it's great to see that cross-pollination in styles. And a lot of the best players are those that have gained that experience playing elsewhere and bring that back and incorporate that into their game, making them a more well-rounded player. It's a great pull from Colony. Has that been your experience? I know you've played a fair bit in Europe as well as in Australia.
Oh, absolutely. I think not only do you get to experience different types of plays, but you also get to see different types of drills, which focus on different things. And I definitely remember playing with different European teams, having different drills, but often these drills were known as, oh, this is the Finnish drill, or this is the German drill, as they've been learnt from specific countries. And they all focus on something slightly different. And as you said, if you can have that experience and you become that more well-rounded player, and then things don't surprise you either. When you play against teams and they throw a new junk on you or they throw a new formation, you can relate that experience.
And as you say that, Stoddard throws a goal and I-Beam get another on the board, keeping things close. I mean, just a classic example, probably the most obvious example common in Australian Ultimate, is the zone that we refer to as the Pommy, originally being a British zone.
That's right. Whereas when I spent my time playing in the UK, the junk zone defense was a very specific type of defense. And so when I came back and we were talking about junk, I was like, well, is this the specific junk or is this just any non-match defense? So then that's the downside to that overseas experience, is that you come back and there's different terminologies and different ways of referring to the same thing, which can lead to some miscommunication sometimes.
Having played a little bit in Germany, one of my strongest feelings there, and one of the things I noticed about that difference very early on, was how they refer to their forces. They talk about forcing left and forcing right, which is just totally different to Australia, where it's all home and away or forehand, backhand forces. And there they use lefts and rights. At this stage, it looks like I-Beam maybe forcing a little bit middle. Colony having to work hard, throw a lot of passes. Lely to Thomas. Denya can't find anything. Comes backwards to Thomas. Thomas to Shepherd. Evans. To Denya. Hayes has the difficult matchup of marking Mark Evans with his range of throws. And he just drops it cold.
That was the classic, I'm going to throw this before I've caught it.
Already thinking about the glory of throwing the goal on the next pass. I-Beam. Gifted straight back, and that's the second cold drop for Scammell this match. He's not having a great final. And Colony gifted the disc back in return. Evans may just shoot early here. Instead goes inside to Bray, gets it back. I've been making Colony work, even for the resets, which is what you've got to do against an offense of this quality. We've spoken a lot about taking away the first couple of looks, and if you can do that, you're being successful against a quality team. Now Colony move it quickly, and they squeeze it in as Moore finds Denya. Two WUC teammates connecting well.
IBM are managing to put some pretty high intensive defense there. Colony's definitely having to work hard for it. Josh and our previous conversation about different terminologies, the three-man zone with a mark, in England it was called a puppy and a fence. In Australia I've heard it as the mark and the wall, and in France it was referred to as the curtain.
The curtain, wow.
I feel like the curtain's a bit loose. You can push through a curtain particularly well.
Yeah,
it's a bit easy. Maybe that's representative of the French way of putting it on.
Yeah, the French never were that great at defense, were they? When all they were trying to do was put up a curtain. Perhaps the Iron Curtain, I don't know. I guess that's a little bit harder to flow through.
Only for the Russians.
Only for the Russians. Yeah, another country that's come on in recent times. The Russian women in particular.
Well, that has had a lot to do with the American team Sockeye going and running some very specific training programs in Russia that have made a really big difference to that country's ultimate.
And it's really cool to see that pay off. And they're now very competitive. Hard running from I-Beam. Gets them some big unders early in this offensive point. The disc will go back. I'm not quite sure what the issue was to Ferguson. Play will restart. I-Beam operating out of a vertical. Shoots for Hill early. He's got Todd Hill on his back hip. 2 or 3 attempts from Todd Hill, but he does get the block. Out of the hand, it looked pretty good. And Hill just not able.
That's great awareness. You're down on your knees. You can see that the disc is still available for the offense and grappling to be able to push it out of reach.
And I-Beam coughed it up again. Their clinical O-line not quite living up to the hype at this stage. Shooting early. Chris Stoddard on Lachlan Murphy. And Stoddard comes up trumps early. 2 big boys, lots of tall timber under that one. Bit of a speculator from Hodgson. Not the kind of shot they'll be wanting to take regularly. And Davey launches one. Learned that that matchup works out well for them already. And they'll go to it again. And there's the goal. I-Beam get it done upwind.
Showing Colony how that long pass should be. Perfectly weighted, a nice speed, ready for that offense just to run onto it.
All the more impressive that the better of the two hucks being the one that went upwind rather than down. Davey, a very powerful thrower, as we see there, particularly on his backhand side. Pushes that huck into the wind and into the path of Chris Lefty Stoddard, as he's affectionately known for obvious reasons.
And having that ability to throw those kind of throws into the wind negates the impact that the wind can have on the game.
We're not quite there yet, but in situations where the wind is really, really strong, it can the game can often be determined by the team with the player most able to kind of throw for meters into the wind. And we're definitely not there yet with the wind, though it is starting to pick up. But if that were to become the case, could quickly start to see a shootout between Mark Evans and Ryan Davey. Denya will initiate things, finds Shepherd underneath. And Folks just steps in front and gets the block. Neither offensive line particularly clean. Scammell holds on to this catch. He's had a couple of cold drops. Makes sure of this one. Moves it to the far side to Wilson. Keys to Folks. Wollongong and Newcastle working together seamlessly. And Tim Hayes, just a couple of inches short. Maybe rushing a pass they didn't need to push.
Looked like he could have had that. He just seemed to be a couple of inches above the disc.
Evans will fire. Huge forehand, as we know he can. He's got his favourite receiver in James Bray underneath it, but it's well out the sideline. And that's what I mean in terms of throwing power. That's upwind and that's a forehand. And he's gone almost end zone to end zone. But it's worth noting, this is the Colony O-line. Now turned it over twice. Chris Hill works hard underneath. Scammell. Sinclair has Hayes in the end zone. Ted Folksy getting a lot of physical attention from James Bray. Quickly uncontests the foul. Maybe caught in indecision between laying out and not. In the end, just clattering into Chris Folks. Sinclair does well to provide the dump option. As Keys comes back round behind the disc. Nice inside forehand, finds Scammell. And eventually they find Hill in the end zone for a break.
Nice. That offense felt a lot more open and cleaner than they have been playing. They seem to have stretched their vertical stack a lot longer than they have been, and that's just created themselves a bit more space, and for the unders as well as for the deep cuts.
Particularly when they're heading downwind, stretching the field, very threatening, because that deep shot, not only is the range there, but it's able to come in very fast and very late. And I-beam sensing a possibility to build some momentum, bring Ryan Davey across to play some defense. Colony's O-line largely unchanged, except for the addition of Gav Moore. That's second break of the game for I-beam. So 2-1 in terms of breaks.
If I-beam are able to break this one upwind, then that really puts them in a good advantage for then continuing downwind. So I can see why they're trying to put a lot of effort into this particular point.
Oh, big pull from Davey. Slightly too big out the back. And that'll be a brick. Colony running out of vertical. We don't see a lot of horizontal out of this team. They keep their offense pretty simple. Not a whole lot of moving parts, but it's quite effective. I-beam in this zone look. Just slowing down Colony. Keys gets a look at one there. And James Bray on the receiving end of that goal from Mark Evans. So they keep it even at 5 apiece. What do you think of that zone?
Yeah, interesting zone. It was definitely quite a loose cup. They had the two around the mark and then another individual marking the dump. It definitely slowed Colony down. It stopped them from making the big huck and it stopped the big gainers. But they will have to think about whether it's effective enough because it didn't stop that movement down the line.
No, it seemed to almost say, you can have this. Like that was what they were willing to give away, but it did slow the tempo. So I don't know if that's something that I-beam will stick with or just use it as a mix-up to change the pace of the game if they feel like they need to slow things down and if Colony's getting too much in a rhythm.
And this win today is really variable. It's picked up immediately after that point. That point was quite calm relative to what we've been seeing. And so it could also just be a factor that zone works better when the wind is higher, and you could have trapped them on that downside sideline. And they just, got lucky that the wind had actually calmed down and Colony were able to use that space that they were being given.
Folks finds Lavis. Davey marked by Evans. That's a great matchup. Both working hard. Folks finds Davey now as he gets open underneath. Ferguson. Folks making Hodgson look silly as he toasts him in the dump space. Stoddard. From one lefty to another. They connect well. And a missed catch by I-beam. Gives that disc up cheaply. Slightly too much on that throw coming towards the downwind side. The wind obviously not helping. And now Colony get to go upwind. Visor to Murphy. To Moore. Colony moving it well up that high side of the field. Moore to finds McDonald. A little bit of confusion perhaps in I-beam as to what the force is meant to be. They were forcing backhand, now they seem to be forcing forehand. When it comes to forces, it's far more important that everyone's on the same page than anything else. Moore can't jump that one in, but Murphy provides the next option. And Colony break back. Going upwind.
What an open game. We've seen a lot of breaks, and yet there's still even Stevens. The game at regionals consisted of one break, which resulted in the 1-point win. And we've already seen 4 breaks in this game.
Certainly some high quality ultimate with very little separating both these teams. And both teams showing that they're very capable to score upwind, almost just as capable as they are going downwind. It's not having a huge impact on which end of the field they're able to score on in any given point.
In fact, I think there's been more breaks in the upwind. Which can often happen because often when you're going downwind, you're going for the big hucks, you're trying those lower percentage shots, and then sometimes in the upwind, that's when you're actually more concentrated and conserving that possession more.
And that pool lands just inside that sideline, exactly where they want them. The downwind corner of the end zone. Ferguson trying to find Lavis, instead shoots long for Hill. It's going to fall short and a pack grab more. Batted it away, almost into the path of Chris Hill. But it is a turnover. McDonald and Evans. Hodgson shoots a backhand. And Murphy uses his great height to great advantage. Inches from the end zone. Fires a little flick to Evans. He's not in either. Looking to jam something into a tiny space. Instead, dumps to Todd Hill. And then finds more. Streaming across the front. And Colony Uprising starting to assert themselves. Stringing together 2 breaks for the first time this match. And opening up a corresponding lead of 2 points. 7-5 as they breathe down the neck of halftime.
And that's the second time that I-Beam's defense has looked a bit confused there. As you said, if you can't get the force consistent amongst the team, you may as well not put one on.
I often hear a lot of discussion between players in the middle of a point about should we change the force because it's slightly better to be backhand here or slightly better to be forehand. And I always emphasize that it's much more important that everyone's on the same page than that you're on the ever slightly better page. Just everyone's got to be in sync and coordinated for a force to be even vaguely effective. And in that case, I-Beam was definitely not. And this might be where the difference in roster size starts to make a difference. Where Colony can put an almost an entirely fresh 7 onto defense right now. And it's I-Beam's same offensive line that's played a good chunk of points, many of whom having had to play defense as well. That difference in energy in the legs could come into play. Stoddard thinks about it. Instead takes Ferguson underneath. A lot of activity coming from the cutting space. Finds Lavis. Davies heads to the end zone, but Lavis won't deliver. Now Davies. Now Ferguson. I-Beam churning with their legs. Around forehand from Folks, so hard to stop the lefty. Lefty finds Stoddard. To Hayes, over the top, rushed it, just on the goal line. Colony get another chance.
Fatigue is a really tricky internal battle to have, because often it's a mental thing. You're tired in your mind much, much more than you're tired in your legs. And your mind is telling you that your legs are tired. And it affects your stance, it affects your pivoting, it affects your faking, and then everything comes out worse because of it.
I think what we saw there, crucially, it also affects your decision making. Tired legs often encourages you to try and get the point over and done with in a single throw. Hodgson gets hand blocked. Chris Stoddard uses his big wingspan and puts that one straight down. Lavis finds Davey. Tim Lavis. Folks eventually gets open on Sutton. Cross to Stoddard. Folks again. Has Hayes going deep. A lot of cutters moving at once. And Lavis decides to do it himself. And Arbeem does hold. Though that didn't feel comfortable.
No, they are tired. They're feeling it.
It's interesting to see that Arbeem haven't used any timeouts yet. I would have thought that with such a small roster that it might be something they look to use early.
Absolutely. Just to get a breath. Sometimes, though, you don't want to take a timeout if you feel like the momentum is in your court. And if they've felt that way, even if the scoreboard doesn't necessarily say it, they may not be willing to take that timeout.
Where do you think the momentum lies at the moment?
Look, I think it's hard to underestimate Colony. I think they've got the legs, and I think they've got the attitude at the moment. That seems to be, you know, they're the ones that are showing us clinical offense, but also clinical defense. The confusion that seems to have come out in Arbeem, it seems that when they score, it's just a little bit harder. They're just having to work a little bit harder to get those points, whereas Colony it seems to be becoming easier. So I think the momentum at the moment is with Colony.
Shepherd will look to get things started for Colony. And Danyard goes up strong, using that big body to protect the disc. To Lely, one of the younger players on this team. And the big shot from Evans, looking for Thomas. And he can't hold on to that one. It's coming in flat and fast on a rope.
He even looked like he tried to temper that throw. He didn't put a lot of oomph behind it, and still it was too fast. Both teams having to make a lot of passes, though.
There's clearly plenty of pressure being applied by the defense. Speaking of young players that are having an impact, John O'Keefe, only 18 a couple of weeks ago, bringing the disc up off a stoppage, off a turnover in the final of the BCI. Just coming off a very successful trip over to New Zealand he did with the under-24 Goannas. Tim Hayes on this near side. John O'Keefe looking to provide a dump. Instead fills to Chris Hill. Not a lot opening up. Stall count must be rising. Inside flick, goes low. Hayes, what a pickup. They may have a discussion about that. A few people saying it wasn't a pickup at all. See if we can see on this replay. It was certainly very low. And there was defense on his heels. It's a bit tricky from this angle. A couple of players in the way. It looks like the disc will go back.
Colony was making some really smart switches on that defense. Arbeem was having a difficult time to get free as the Colony players were just handing off defenders.
The inside forehand again, this time for Sinclair, and into the goal. Much better the second time. And Arbeem break back to take it to 7-all. This game is really a game of punch and counter punch. Each landing blows at different stages. So it's 3 breaks apiece at this point.
Which really says that they're having trouble holding their offense.
We've only played 14 points and 6 of them haven't been offensive holds. So it's a decent proportion. IBM will want to dig deep for a little bit of extra defensive effort at this point, recognising that it's 7 apiece, it's Galaxy Point, and they have the opportunity to take half. And then they'll start the second half on offense.
And you can see them really thinking about their matchups for this point. And if they can capitalise on the last 2 points and get this one, then the momentum's definitely swung.
It's really evident where the pullers are trying to land their pulls going downwind. They're aiming for this downwind sideline. And so far, they've been doing just that. Shepherd marked by Keys. It's a dangerous matchup. Evans goes towards the end zone. And then the throw comes. A lot of players get underneath it. Hill does enough on the first instance. And IBM now working out of a horizontal. Stoddard shoots. He's got Scammell. It's coming in flat and fast, as we've seen a couple of times going downwind.
Just went up a little bit too early there. Still above his head. Not an easy throw to catch at all.
Gav Moore picking this up. Apologies. Michael Thomas picking this up. Marked by Stoddard. Chris Folkes hanging in the lane, poaching off the dump. Denya having to go to turf to hold on to that. Now Evans marked by Keys. And James Bray, a cold drop. Gives I-Beam the opportunity they've been wanting to take half. Chris Folkes picks it up. A lot of players heading to the end zone. The throw's out in front. The pursuit is on. Adid. And he can't quite haul that one in.
Both teams desperate just to get the half-point finish. Half-time finish.
But it will mean that Colony have to work the full field again. Said earlier that they usually operate out of a vert, but we see them here in a horizontal stack. Moore and Lely in the middle. Lely immediately heads to the end zone, but Thomas isn't having any of it. It's Bray, finds Evans in the center. He's got Shepherd going deep. There's no way he's not throwing that. Flat and fast, but upwind, that might just work. And Shepherd puts it down. You can tell he's disappointed with himself. He's a better player than that. He knows he should have held on to that. 2 full hands. And John O'Keefe calls a timeout.
That's a really interesting choice, to call a timeout on your own end zone line.
Maybe even inside your own end zone.
Would you have done that?
I'm not sure. I recognise what he's doing. They're the defensive line, so they've got the turnover and they've got possession, and they've had possession a couple of times and things have been a little scrappy. So maybe this is an opportunity to discuss their offensive structure for the rest of this point. But you're right, in terms of field position, not where you want to be, especially considering how difficult it is to generate offense off a static start. Certainly favours defenders when nothing's moving.
So you'd expect to see some kind of structure or play that'll gain ground immediately. They can't be spending time dumping, swinging, and risk, like you said, that static start and risk that turnover right on their end zone. Of course, it gives them a breather, a bit of a drink.
And that too, as I said earlier, they do have timeouts, and if they don't use at this point, they're throwing one away because you have one in each half and then a spare to take whenever you like. Looks like they'll be operating out of a 2-5 Horo. 2 handlers back. Now they bring the third back as well. So a more traditional 3-4 Horo. Stoddard and Hill in the middle. Their primary looks, certainly. Stoddard makes that first move. Finds Hayes. And IBeam do well to immediately get out of their end zone and start to progress the disc downfield. And Gav Moore run through, and Folks clutching at his shoulder. Not sure if there was a lot of contact there. Oh, he certainly immediately unhappy with the contact. And they will talk about if it was a foul or not. Gav Moore saw this a mile off, poaches in. And to some extent, I can see Chris Folks' argument. He was moving across the field and Moore came into the back of him. But it looks like the turnover will stand and the injury will be taken. Davey takes his place on the field. But Colony have the disc. Roughly on their offensive brick mark. Michael Thomas picks up the Frisbee. Finds Evans underneath. Not a lot opening up. And Colony gives it straight back. Keys wants to get things moving quickly. Scammell busts for the end zone. Can't imagine that throw will come. They've been unsuccessful going deep this way a lot. Hill fakes the large as well. Scammell shapes back underneath for an easy under. IBeam down the line for Scammell. And IBeam break to take half. They had to grit their teeth to do it and grind pretty hard. But the outcome is that IBeam lead this match 8-7.
It's not pretty, but it's working.
Certainly not Champagne Ultimate.
And that defense is, I mean, I think the right result happened there, but it is the responsibility of defense to make sure that they can get it cleanly and that they don't hit people on their way through.
It is, and of course that's one of those ones that is right on the borderline. Who was in the space first and who was the one initiating the contact? Does feel like Moore coming from behind with vision of what's happening in front of him. The onus is on him not to run into a player, but in this situation, turnover did stand.
It's challenging, and people do misunderstand the situation, or they also misjudge their own speed and position. Sometimes you think you're going to get there easily without causing any trouble, and then you're not as fast as you think you are, and you crash
Happens
into
to me all
someone.
the time. Constantly not as fast as I think I am.
Yeah. those of us who are just trailing behind don't cause any trouble.
don't have that problem. Well, Colony playing some hacky sack at halftime. I-Beam having a drink. We might follow I-Beam's lead and take a short break as well, but you shouldn't. Don't go anywhere as we continue to bring you action from the men's final, the Brisbane Canberra Invitational. Welcome back to the second half of the Brisbane Canberra Invitational. And what a half it's been. It's 8-7 to I-Beam at the end of it. But there were swings and roundabouts on the way. 3 breaks apiece. Both teams have traded the lead a couple of times.
It's basically a game of breaks. We have 4 breaks to I-Beam, 3 breaks to Uprising.
And I-Beam with the advantage of playing offense to start the second half. Tim Lavis juggles this pull. He's been relatively quiet this game. Maybe surprising for a player of his caliber, or maybe just starting to show his age. That's McCabe. Swings to Davey. Davey shoots. He's got Hill underneath it. He'll go up nicely with one hand. Doesn't have a lot to support. And that one pops over the top, bobbles in the air, but it's going to be out the sideline by that point anyway. Jaden Ferguson not able to hold on.
We've seen that over and over again this game, that we've had a really great long shot just to be thrown away in the end zone.
They seem to do the hard stuff really well and then struggle. Progress at the last 5 metres. Colony will now head the other way. Evans trying to find the dump to McDonald. Keys does well, puts a lot of pressure on, leaves his feet. McDonald shapes for the big. Murphy provides an under. Looks like I-Beam forcing middle here. Trying to compress Colony's play into the guts. Moore shoots deep, trading his typical role, and finds Visor, who looks for McDonald, but looks far too far out in front. Gav Moore showing his versatility. He's usually the player on the end of those long shots. This time, having a turn throwing it. It's part of what makes him so difficult to mark, and players like him, you're scared of him going deep, so you give him the under, and then he throws a throw like that. Lavis struggling to find a dump, eventually finds Ferguson. Davey marked by Mark Evans, doing battle. Eventually does get a little bit of separation, enough to get the disc in his hands, which is where I-Beam wants it. Stoddart has Hill going deep, and the throw will come. Moore in pursuit, and goes over the top. The throw maybe just a little short, would have preferred it further out in front.
Great D, reaching out in front to take it away from the receiver.
Gav Moore, really excellent defender, particularly in that deep space. Using his pace, height, and explosiveness. Great effect. Mark Evans wants to throw it to Hodgson. I-Beam doing a great job of shutting down Colony downfield. Really not able to generate much. And Hodgson has to shoot again. Looking for Evans. And it looks like Evans will call a foul on Davey. Davey's called a foul on Evans. Not sure. More importantly for I-Beam's prospects this game, Davey looks a little ginger. And a key player like him for their both offense and defense, it'll be a big loss if he has to leave the field for any length of time. They do now seem to be discussing the play itself. And we'll have another look at it.
That's tough. It's hard to see from here.
It is tough. Davey was just running straight deep, and Evans seemed to come back under and into the body of Davey. I think it'd be difficult to argue that Davey initiated the contact, but it looks like it'll be uncontested. In which case, Evans gets the disc. No, sorry, the disc will go back. Contested call. Davey will leave the field injured. Gingerly testing his ankle. Not sure what the stall count was at the point of the release, but following a contested foul, the maximum it can be is 6. So I'm sure that's where it'll be. I-Beam will need to cover deep as the shot goes again and again falls a little short. Hodgson not able to calibrate, despite 2 goes at it. McDonald connects with Shepherd to swing the disc. Hill on Todd Hill. Hodgson. Meters out, miscommunication with Moore. Thought he was planning to accelerate up line. It was actually just a fake. And this first point out of half turning into a bit of a grind for both Lions.
Both teams just not able to make that final throw into the end zone.
Tim Lavis wants to get it done. He's looking deep for Chris Stoddard, who will get there as he slides on his knees into the end zone for the goal. Literally end zone to end zone.
Fabulous run. Nice commitment too, because it looked like it was fading, but he didn't give up. He went all the way in.
Great grab. And a pearl of a throw from Tim Lavis.
And this is interesting now. It still feels really tight, and yet Colony hasn't scored since before halftime.
That was the first point since half.
That's true. But they haven't scored for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. That's how long that point was. It felt like half the half.
It was a long point. It will have taken a lot out of the legs of a lot of these players. You're right, Colony last scored when the score was 7-5. So IBEAM have gone on a 4-point run. And I'll see if they can continue it here, going downwind. Some fresh legs on this line. Their 13-player roster so far hasn't come back to bite them. We'll see whether that makes a difference going down the stretch. And that pull, will it stay in? No, it'll just fade. A metre or two wide. Allowing Denya to bring it to the brick mark. Colony working out of a horizontal stack. Bray and Shepherd in the centre. Moore and Lely on the wings. It'll be Shepherd that gets things moving. And Mark Evans, cold drop for the second time this match. And how much of a difference does that make, Anita? Not only when your team's making cold drops, but when it's your captain, when it's the leader that you look to, making simple errors like that.
Yeah, that's really, it can be hard for a team, but nice score there. Oh no, defend. Look, it's one of these things where sometimes, yeah, you want your captain to be infallible, right? You want them to be able to show you exactly what needs to be done and when, but at the same time, they're human, and sometimes it can make you actually feel better that we all drop sometimes, we all throw away.
Well, Evans has shown both this game, but I'm not sure if it's brought a whole lot of comfort to his team. It's Shepherd on the far side with the disc. Another one of the captains. Denya, break side backhand. It's going to pop up for Moore. He goes early, but he gets it the second time. The heart skipped a beat there, I think, for a lot of the players on the sideline. And Uprising keep it close at 9-8.
And they'll be happy with that. That was a nice offense after that grind, first point after half.
Crucially about that point being quick, relatively speaking, is it puts IBEAM's offensive line back on the field with only a relatively small amount of rest after having to grind through that first point out of half, which was so long and so grueling. Ryan Davey back on the field, IBEAM's captain. He left it a little earlier with a ginger ankle, but luckily for them, he's returned. Clearly nothing too serious. Davey to Lavis. Hill goes deep. Lavis doesn't take the shot. Davey goes inside to Ferguson. To McCabe. Highbeam moving well. Split stack. A lot of players heading deep. That's quite far out in front. Quite an aggressive look from Nichols. Pushing the envelope just a touch.
Good to see them trying something new, though.
Colony running out of their vertical set. Norton. And it'll go back to him. Sutton shoots a big backhand. That'll be a struggle to keep that in.
It's hard to say no to that, though, isn't it?
It's tempting. When you've got the 6'4" target, maybe 6'5" target of Lachlan Murphy, heading full pelt for the end zone, it's hard to refuse. And Lavis checks the disc in. Davey not able to get separation from Wickremmer. And Mitch Sutton with a run through. Callahan redeems himself for the poor throw earlier. And Colony bring it back to evens at 9 apiece. Mitch Ranger Sutton out of nowhere nabs himself for Callahan.
That is brilliant. Such great reading of the play to be able to see that coming. Because if you don't get that, you are way out of position.
It's a gamble. He rolled the dice. Came up sixes.
What a game. So many breaks and they're still even.
We were just talking about how Colony had come out slow after half and how the momentum seemed to be shifting towards I-beam. And then something like that happens. And you can feel the energy just shift in the, I was about to say stadium, but around the oval.
The 10 people who are watching, getting excited.
Yeah, all 12 of our online viewers right now. I'm sure they're on the edge of their seats. Colony with a bit more of a spring in their step after that. Smiles on dials. How do you as an offensive line from I-beam's perspective come back after just having a Callahan scored on you? What do you say to yourself?
You got to just say to yourself that that was an unusual event. And to really, look, a lot of these, it all comes down to your mental toughness and how do you cope with any of these things. And you have to be able to forget it. You have to be able to wipe the slate clean and come back for a new point and a new matchup.
We'll see whether I-beam can do just that as McCabe fires for Folks. And he overdoes it. Not a lot of success shooting downwind. In fact, far more success has been had shooting upwind this game. Admittedly, a few of the upwind shots have turned into contests. Just going downwind more often than not, no one's even got anywhere near the Frisbee.
No, they're coming out fast, they're coming out with an angle on them, and if you don't get it 100% accurate, then it's not on. This really is a mental game for I-beam at the moment, though. They have to be mentally strong to overcome the fatigue that they're feeling. They have to be mentally strong to overcome the clear momentum shift that's happening in Colony's favour. We're going to have to just see if they can do that.
McDonald and Evans will just recycle at the back of the stack. Hodgson shoots a forehand. Nichols is there. Sticks out a big paw. A bit of contact. There might be a call on that. Wouldn't be surprised if there was. Spencer Ferrier.
Didn't look as clean as it could have been.
No. They'll talk about it. Hannah will provide his opinion as well. And the turnover stands. So I-beam will get another look. The pass intended for Nichols soars over his head and Colony intercept it. Hodgson finds Hannah. He swings for Evans. Gets Stoddard diving around on the mark. Now Hannah fires an inside forehand to McDonald. McDonald continues with a breakside huck that pops up into the wind, and Lavis will come down with it. And he'll walk very slowly to the front of the end zone.
You know, that wind is not particularly strong, but it's playing a lot of havoc with what's happening on the field.
Seen a few of those throws pop up.
Over the top of people's heads, both in the downwind direction and the upwind direction.
Folks to McCabe. Back to Folks. To Booth. Calls a foul. Gets clipped on the way in. Keys back to Lavis. Lavis shoots forehand. He's got Stoddard in space. Almost makes a meal of it. Lost it in the sun a little bit, but recovers well. And steadies the ship. Stems the bleeding. I-beam continue to trade up at 10-9. So we are progressing rapidly towards time cap. At which point they will finish the point, add one, and play to the new target. Doesn't seem likely we'll be getting to 15 this game. It's been some hard-fought long points.
Definitely an intense game. No one's been able to, except for I-beam getting a few points on Uprising. They've never been more than a point away from each other.
It's exactly what we expect at the pointy end of an elite tournament like this. Chris Hill with the pull. Fielded by Denya. Send it to Thomas. Finds Bray. Go back to Thomas down line. Shepherd's hustling towards the end zone and the throw will come. He has the pace, but the throw hangs. And Jack Gray gets a block on Alex Shepherd in the end zone. It's not a claim that many people can make.
Now in the unenviable position of that downwind corner.
Coffin corner, as it's affectionately known. For obvious reasons, folks. Crossfield to Gray, gets them out of that tricky spot. Sinclair. As steady as ever. Spoke too soon as his pass goes to turf, and John O'Keefe can't dig it out. And Evans will get another look. And he just pops it in to Gav Moore. And things are back to evens at 10 apiece.
Yeah, that Ivan offense was looking good at getting it up to the strong side with the wind, and just that dump throw back, wasn't able to keep it up.
Looks like we've had a timeout call. Both teams having a breath, recognizing that from here on in, it's the end game, the home stretch, and it'll be pedal to the metal kind of stuff. And they're trying to gather their thoughts and feelings before then. What kind of messages would you expect are being delivered right now, Anita?
Look, I reckon that they've got to be giving a pep talk at this point. This is just about digging deep and putting your head down and expending everything that you have. There's nothing left to reserve. You know, this game might have 1-2 points left in it, and that's what's going to make the difference. And then that's what you can carry into nationals. A win here is such a confidence booster. And, you know, the men's tournament, the men's game here is so close. And, you know, semis were won on Universe Point, and finals are going to be won on Universe Point. And so taking that confidence into nationals is really a great mental boost.
Been a lot of close games this weekend. Throughout pool play, not a lot separates the top from the bottom, and that's what makes this tournament so exciting to participate in and so challenging. There's no easy games where you can rest yourself a little bit. No opportunity to blink or take the foot off the gas, even for a moment, or you'll be punished. So here they go. So they try to dig deep for the home stretch. The other Colony team has arrived on the sideline, adding their voice in support of their Uprising teammates.
Let's go, Colony! Get it up, Colony!
Colony psyching themselves up for a big D point. You know, it'll be all about the effort that they can put in now, and that pull doesn't set the stage well for them. As it lands out the side of the end zone. Lavis will take it to the brick mark. And there are few cooler heads out there that you would rather initiate the offense to absorb the pressure that Colony will bring to bear defensively this point than Tim Lavis.
So just to be clear, this is the last point. This is game to 11.
Well then, it's do or die time for both these teams. Chris Hill shoots forehand to the end zone, looking for Jack Gray. That is an ill-advised decision. A rush of blood to the head. Chris Hill may have just coughed up the championship this weekend.
Now, counterintuitively, in this game, you might prefer to be on defense, going upwind to score that final point.
Colony may agree with you in a few moments' time, depending on what happens next. Hodgson swings wide to Shepherd. Todd Hill comes under with that, I'll say, distinctive, possibly dysfunctional throwing form that he has, particularly on his forehand. Will do almost anything to avoid throwing it. Evans has players heading to the end zone, doesn't take the option, instead goes to Bray. Right on this near side now. Hill, work hard to take away the dump. And Evans almost bobbles again. He's had 2 cold drops this game. The prospect for a third is real. Hodgson has Shepherd going to the deep. He shoots a forehand. It's high. It's going to float. Chris Hill is underneath it, as is James Bray. They both got very early. Both come down without touching it, and Chris Hill bats it away. We've got a foul call, though. James Bray not happy with the physical attention he was receiving. And we'll have another look.
Oh, that's hard. It's hard to not just have a reflexive call when you're in this kind of pressure, but I'm not sure there was a lot of contact there.
Definitely looked pretty clean to me at first glance. But of course, we have the luxury of slow-mo.
And this can be a real test of spirit and test of your individual convictions, I guess. Can you admit that maybe it wasn't that good in such a integral moment?
And looks like it'll be contested. Oh, uncontested, apologies. So the D will stand. I'm pretty rusty on these hand signals, I'll be honest. So I-beam will get the disc. No, it is an uncontested foul. Colony's disc, the front of the end zone, with everything to play for. Aidan McCabe has the task of marking Mark Evans in the dump space, as he surely is the first option. He goes backwards. Jack Gray on M. Hodgson. McCabe giving Evans plenty of space. An interesting choice. Surely you'd want to be tight on a universe point moment. Colony continue to work backwards, but maintain possession. Shepherd with the disc. Swings to Evans, to Hodgson. McCabe, almost gets a look at that one. Has a sniff. Colony patience. I-beam grit. Pressuring every pass. Evans right on the doorstep now. Push pass to Gav Moore. And Colony Uprising are your 2019 BCI champions. And I-beam hang their heads. And the lead in their legs starts to set in. Fatigue finally getting the better of them in this one.
What a great game, though. Colony was showing like they were going to be dominant. They had all the momentum of the game. I-beam came back, managed to get 4 points ahead, and then Colony just managed to dig deep and get those fresh legs to come back for the win. And great spirit from I-beam on that call there. They could have contested that. It's hard not to contest it when you feel like you got the D, but you know that they were able to reflect and admit that there might have been that contact.
And really, what better way to finish it than some patient offensive grind outside the end zone. I think it's very representative of everything that we saw in this game. There were no easy passes, pressure on every throw. And with that thought, we might leave you there. It's been great having you with us all weekend here. So we've been streaming the Brisbane Canberra Invitational live from the nation's capital, presented by ULTI.TV, supported by Factory and Fishwick Ultimate Clubs. I've been Max Stenstrom. I've been joined in the commentary booth by Anita Beck. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
ULTI.TV.